I'm going to install a BL Touch, well a clone BL Touch on my Ender 3 here. Now I have the SKR Mini E3 version 1.2 board on this thing, in the motherboard. I've also got the 3.5 inch TFT touchscreen on here as well. So I've already got those upgrades in place. And I basically just need to install this thing and reflash the main board here with the Big Tree Tech firmware, which is available on GitHub. Here's the loom which you've got to thread through. This did come with a little loom on already, you know, little wire section on it already. I've taken it off because I don't use that one. It comes with this bigger one, so I need to use this big one instead, which should be long enough, I hope. I've already taken the cable ties off this loom here. These are normally cable tied together, and the trick to getting this cable through will be, I haven't done it yet, just say it's the first time for me, the trick is to actually squash the cable down, right? Because this is the obviously a looming cable to help protect the wiring so it doesn't rub on stuff and get cut through and that sort of stuff. So if you get the cable, normally it's, you know, you've got to try and push the wiring through it. If you squash it together, it gets a lot bigger. Right, so what you got to do is squash it all together at one end when you feed the cable through, and it'll make shoving the cable through a lot easier. And if we look at the back of the printer here, you can see there's a loom coming down here. There's also got some more cable ties down here trying to cut, and that'll free up that whole loom, and then we'll take the cover off the main box and go from that end. So let's cut this off. I've got heaps of cable ties, so I'm not worried about getting rid of these and having to replace them. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all. Cut it off. Also got to be careful not to cut the wires themselves. Alright, so that frees up this loom, and there might be another one inside. I have to go and see. I think there's a cable tie on the end of the cable itself. There was one this end. So let's open the box up. Alright, so I happen to have this hexagonal screwdriver, which is great for doing this kind of work. Take the front part off. You see I've got this badly printed fan shield here. It's, yeah, I could have done a better job on that. I've got a lot better at 3D printing since then. It's one of my very first prints, I think. Some of the rubbish going in there, because I noticed pretty quickly that you got debris falling on top of it. We'll get the cover out of the way, and we shall unplug the fan for the time being. There's two ways of actually hooking this thing up. There is actually dedicated ports on the board for it, but you can also use a Z-stop connection. I'm not sure which one's the best one to use. All the tutorials I've seen myself have been saying to use a Z-stop. Apparently it works slightly better. I really have no idea why there would be a difference. I could try both ways actually. It's only a matter of flashing, isn't it? So I might just use the default connections on the board here, which are down here, which are labelled as servo and probe. Just down here, you probably can't really see it, but that one there and that one there. Okay, servo and probe, those are the two connections I'm going to use. I'll try those first, and if the probe one doesn't work very well, then I'll switch over to using the Z-stop one instead. We'll just see how it works out. So now I've got to sort this loom out, so there's another cable tie right there, so we'll cut that off. I can get in there with my cutters. Just get in there. There we go. Let's get my tweezers in there, so my fat fingers. There we go, that's out of the way too. So now that loom should give me access right down, so you can see this loom here is moving. I might slide it out, do it at the back, and then slide it back down again. That's probably going to be easier. Okay, so I started getting it out, so I've got it through the hole in the back here, and I'll just basically push it on the cable, as you can see. And it makes it all nice and fat, and makes it really easy to thread through, in theory. Alright, so we'll give it a go. We'll get the connector, we'll shove it in there like that, and we'll push it in. And we should be able to get it basically right up to the end. We may even be able to feed it up and down like this. Okay. So you can see I'm just feeding it in like this, using the flicks to guide it up. Okay, now I can actually come from the other end as well now. And there we go. There it is. Okay, so that is nice and easy. And then we just have to make sure we've got enough threaded through to go to the other end and not be tight to the actual sensor. Now the wiring here looks short-ish. We'll see how we go with that. There's not a lot sticking out the other end. It probably doesn't need all this loom like that anyway. I'll probably have to sort of look at how I can shorten that loom down or something anyway. We'll see how we go with that. So now let's go to the front. You can see there's the wiring, like we need it. So this bracket is one I found on Thingiverse. I just did a search and I looked at various different mounts for the ABL touches, and this is the one I like the most because it's got this nice rigid bracing on here that looks quite strong and sturdy. It's got recesses for the nuts already as well, and there's nuts. This is the mounting hole that came with the sensor, and just went straight in nice and easy. Whether you have to change the screws that are on here, I don't know yet. Whether they might be too short, I might have to lengthen them or put some different ones in there. That's not a problem. I've got some other hole I can plug in there if I need to, but this should just go on there like that, and we have to plug that into the sensor down there, and it'll just sit down that gap there. Then we can sort out the looming and get it all tidy up. We'll cable tie this end and then run it back down the other way. Not hard at all. So the same screwdriver I used to remove the cover is the size we need for these screws here. I suppose they're really bolts, aren't they? They're in-hex bolts. They look a little bit short. There might be an issue. We'll see. Here we go. So that holds on the whole fan assembly. So that's what secures that in place. So what I'm going to do is plug the sensor in first, and then we'll put the mounting place and see if these screws long enough. Okay, there we go, that's in place. So we make sure that's not trapped to the wires, and we'll stick it on there like that. Let's find a hole and find the other hole which it goes into, which is over here somewhere. Oh, there's enough thread there. That's it's in about 3 threads. It's a little bit skimpy. The other one's behind the sensor. Of course it is. Can I get through there? Yeah, just. I might actually have to take the sensor back off. Hadn't considered that, had I? Let's see how we go. Yeah, I'm going to take the sensor back off. That's bad. Because I was thinking, I'd save myself from trying to get the screws through there. Let's loosen the one end of the sensor off and spin it around a bit. So now I've got the captive nuts in there. They're actually held in place because they're actually wedged into the actual holes that are pre-made into it. So they're actually stuck in there now, which is perfect. That means we've got to take the screws out. There we go, that's one screw out. Can I spin this with that? It might be enough. Might be able to loosen this off and spin it around. Yep, there we go. It's out of the way now. Great. We can carry on. Not a big hassle, but just a little one. So there's that screw hole. Right there. It's going in. So that's in place. I'm happy with that. Spin it back around and put it back on. This is the first time I've done a ABL touch, so it should be interesting to see if it actually works or not. I have no experience, so it should be good for you too, to see how things work out for you when you try and do it yourself for the first time. So that should be free moving. It is. Got the loom wire here, which I'm going to keep tucked to the back like that, but I'm probably going to pull a bit more of that through, and then we'll cable tie that. Now originally it said a cable tie on the end there, then it's cable tied to this loom. I think that's purely because of the factory assembly side. I'm just going to do one cable tie around both, it should be fine. I don't really see it being an issue. So let's just do it here. When you cut these, try and make sure there's no sharp edges, because one day you're going to catch yourself on it and cut yourself. It can happen. I've done it plenty of times myself in the past. But here as well, just to follow along the Teflon tube. Gets all nicely organised. I think following it round is generally a better idea. It just keeps it a bit better under control. So I think I'll do the same thing. It was already followed around to here before originally, and that's worked okay for me. So I'll do the same again. And I'm slightly out of shot. That's always helpful, isn't it? Yeah. I'll stick one about there. Okay, so it's all loomed together nicely. So move together like that. Cut those off. Try and cut them flush. So that's that end done. I mean, you could have like put some heat shrink on there, something to protect it. I don't really think it's necessary. It pretty much just sort of sits there. It doesn't really do much. You know, you could always put some buffers or something in there if you really wanted to. Let's do the other side. So now, what I'm going to do before I worry about trying to tidy this up, is I'm going to get these wires threaded through and make sure the length's okay, because if they don't reach, I might have to do some work on that. Okay, what I've decided to do is tip it on its side, because it just makes it easier to get to. And here's the cables, and here's the loom, and there's the channel, which you've got to try and get through because it steps up and down. So I think the easiest way to do it is to actually get it like this and just poke it through the channel with your finger, to get it through to the other side using the loom as a guide to help push it through. And I can actually get my fingers the other side as well and try and grab the loom itself. If I can get the loom, then the rest will come with it. Now I can try and get these connectors pulled through. And there they are, they're through. Okay, so I'll make sure we push the loom through some more. Obviously I'm going to have to try and set this length so it doesn't catch on anything and position it correctly and cable tie it as it needs to go. It's catching on the back of the bed just here, so I need to make sure we pull this back out so the bed has full travel and doesn't catch on anything and that sort of stuff. Alright, that's quite important. You could have it sort of round the side more. I think I did actually look at that once before. Upwards travels I think you've got to watch out for. I don't tend to do quite tall prints, so my prints are fairly small. So I'm not too worried about the height aspect, but I should still try and allow for it if I can. Now I don't do full height anyway because I've got the spool mounted on the side at the top, so I can't even go full height anyway. So I think if I have the loom on the side like this, it's actually going to be slightly better, as long as I can get it tied so it's not interfering with anything. You just have to make sure the cable's not going to get caught or anything. I mean, if I do that, that should be okay. I think I'll bring it around and bring it around the stepper motor cabling on the side here. That'll just all go together. I think that'll be alright. It used to be I had it on the back of the bed and it'd be touching on the back of the bed here, so changing that I think is a good thing. Okay, so there you go. You can see I've done that. I've just tied it onto here, so this is all still fairly loose. It's got some movement left in it. Don't need anything too tight. Just cut these off. Okay, that's that bit. Now we've got to sort this end out. So there's the connectors. So we've got to be careful about the length on these cables versus this loom here. So that is also a factor we've got to consider. I mean, really, I think these might be a fraction short. I might actually even have to change this looming around the top here slightly more just to make it a bit shorter of a loop. It doesn't really matter too much if it cuts the corner off slightly, but obviously you don't need these plugs getting pulled. So let's get these wires hooked up. I've created enough slack now to be happy enough with it. So you have to make sure you get these the correct way around. This particular colour coding is green for ground or 0 volts, red for the 5 volts and yellow for the signal. So that goes with green to the left hand side in this case towards the back of the printer. Could be a different coloured wire, could be brown. Brown's quite the common one. Make sure it's pushed down properly. And then we've got the probe connection. Black also goes towards the back. So ground's to the left hand side, as it were, or 0 volt rails to the left hand side. Here you want to see it. And we'll get that pushed in. So I'm going to use this connection first, and we'll see if this one works okay or not. It probably does, but we won't actually know until we go to find out, will we? Just make sure we write it down. Now what I'll do is cable tie this up so these cannot get pulled. So I have to cable tie the looms together in here and again on the back of the unit how it was originally so that these wires can't get pulled off. Okay, so you can see I've cable tied back here to get that loom back together again, all nicely organised over here and free from tight sections. And I've also done inside the box over here as well and make sure these have got a bit of play in them. So I've had to shorten this loom up here a little bit. I've had to cut one of those cable ties off to try and get this a bit better. It seems that the cable comes with this BL Touch, well, this 3D Touch. It's not actually a BL Touch. It's a clone. It's probably about, I don't know, 5 centimeters too short, really. It could be slightly longer. I think it's a bit short, really. So I've had to compromise a little bit on my looming to try and make that work a bit better. We'll see how that works out. Alright, so let's refit the cover. This should work. If it doesn't, then I'll have to put it apart again and move this connector, but we'll see. Right, where's the fan go? I've lost where the fan goes. Okay, fan is the rearmost connector. I suppose that's probably why, so plug that in there. Put the cover back on. Okay, that's the physical thing rebuilt. It's all back together. All I've really got to do now is look at the firmware side of things and hope that part works. So this is the GitHub page for the SKR Mini E3, which is also the board I've got in my End 3. And the firmware versions, there's 3 of these, and apparently I'm updated for like 4 months. It's just a bit disappointing. I'd hope for a newer version than that, but not so much. So firmware bin is the basic firmware. BL Touch is using the connections I've used, which is these connections here. And BL Touch for Z homing is using the other connections, which is the original Z switch on the side instead. So I could use this one as well. So it's mentioned about manual combining, but these are pre-compiled, so I should be able to just put this onto the SD card and boot the thing up and it should reload it, hopefully. But apparently I've got to rename the firmware file to this name before I try and do that, otherwise it'll ignore it. So it looks for this particular firmware name when it boots up, I'm guessing, and we'll go from there. So let's go and do it. Right, so I've got the SD card in here with that firmware on it. with a renamed firmware, so that should work when I boot it up. Don't forget this is the SKR Mini E3, not the Ender 3 main board. Let's boot it up. What do we get? It says no printer attached because it's currently flashing itself. It should be anyway. So I'll just wait a little while and I'll see what happens. Okay, it says ready. We have some progress. So what I might do now is shut it down again. The BL Touch has worked, it's operated, it's sitting there now. I could hear the thing going on off, so it seems to be working. So let's see about doing levelling, shall we? It's in there somewhere. What about levelling? Deploy, that came out. Stow, that came out. Do a test. That's doing that. I don't know how to stop the test. It's still going. That's interesting. And we'll start again. They should have already done the firmware thing on there, so it should be okay. It does rename it. Let's do a bed levelling and see what happens. That triggered on a Z. Oh, looks like it's doing something. Yep. Okay. Let's see what this height looks like. That's off by a few millimetres, a couple of millimetres probably. Suppose I can find out which way it works. Maybe it uses both. Just does that just to figure out how level the bed is. Because my bed does sag in the middle. The edges are good. If you print within the middle region, it's okay. But it does curve slightly, and that's after I straightened the bed up. It was quite bad. It's still not wonderful, but I got one of the early beds which weren't quite flat, to say the least. You can actually see the curve in it. So you can see how this goes with this. I'll do a print after this and see how it comes out, whether it tries to print in mid-air or not. So it's using 5 points, which is good because it means it allows for the bag to sag in the middle of the bed. If you weren't using enough points, you might get a good representation. It's obviously a lot slower to do, but I just ran out of bed travel. That was interesting. Great, store the settings so it thinks it knows where the bed is. Great. What are these offsets? 1.85 mil, I'm guessing that means. Well, let's try and do a print. Let's see what comes on there. What we're going to print next? I'll need some filament for a start. Otherwise it won't work very well. I will have to think about this actually. Okay, I think I'm set up. Let's try and print. You may notice I've got this insulation shroud here. It got caught on something. I think I had a little bit of a leak. It did a homing move and it sat there for a little bit or something. Anyway, so that kind of got caught and fell off. And strangely, it actually seems to print slightly better without it. So I never got bothered putting it back on again. Yeah, I don't know. It's a bit weird. This bed I've been using here, it's an aluminium plate or something, or steel plate. Works really well. It's got a beautiful finish on it because it's fairly smooth and it holds on just well enough. But you have to be a little bit careful. When I've done some thicker prints, it's actually lifted off. So adhesion's a bit hard on it. This is going up to 240. This must be a PET G setup. I don't want 240 on this. This is PLA. Just do 210. Well, I guess we'll find out how good it is. Seems a little bit close. Yeah, definitely a bit close. This might require a bit of tweaking. There we go. Now get some coming out. Okay. Yeah, that's looking better. So I'll probably have to redo this level again at some point. But looks like I just need to do some adjustments on there slightly. Let's just readjust these about the same amount. And we'll see how that goes. It wasn't quite the level I was expecting. Before I was getting perfect level prints. Well, perfectly heighted prints. So we'll see, I might have to adjust this slightly or tune it in here something. I'm going to have to do some more research on that, but yeah, it's working. Right, so I've been playing around with this printer for a little while now, and I'm sort of getting the hang of how to use this BL Touch thing. So in the settings in here, you can't see it right now because I'm printing, but you've got the Z offset. The Marlin default for the Ender 3 is 1.85mm. Now, but this particular mount I've got printed on here doesn't quite match up, which is why I went across the bed when I first did the print after the first calibration. It doesn't know how long the touch sensor is in relation to the nozzle, which is what the Z offset is all about. So I've worked out it needs to be about 0.8mm difference between the two. I've been gradually tuning that Z offset and getting closer and closer. What I've been doing to compensate when I first started printing is I've been using the baby step setting in here. And so I'll start printing, I'll see how it does that first calibration line down the side there, with that purge line, we want to call it. And I've been adjusting the baby steps by 0.1 of a mil until I get a printing line, basically. As soon as it starts to print, that's obviously 0.1. I hit it again, it's getting 0.2, which is what the layer height is set to. So right now, on this particular print, I've got 0.2 set. I know now I need to increase my Z height by 0.2, and that should be getting pretty close. Now the current Z height is 1 mil, which means I need a Z height of 0.8. So I can then set that up in there and it'll work. The other problem I had is I assumed that once it's set it'll always use it, but it seems that probably isn't the case. And if you want to use that correct Z height offset and everything, you need to make sure that you do the BL Touch calibration before each print, which is a bit painful because it takes a couple of minutes. So yeah, it's a bit of a trade-off, I suppose. But yeah, well, I'm still learning this thing. I'm not 100% sure yet. I'm still trying to figure this stuff out, but that's my experience so far. Right, so a little bit of an add-on to this. Now, the issue I was having with the mesh not being used is because I've actually need to include the code in the G code to tell it to use the mesh, because that's fairly obvious, isn't it, really? Although it's not explicitly spelled out anywhere. So just here is my starting code for the item I'm printing, which is those little spaces. So you've got G28 there, which is a normal homing position. That's always in the code, tells it to home before it prints. This G29, which you got commented out, that does auto bed leveling. So if you need to do an auto bed leveling at the start of a print, if you want to always do it at the start of the print, it will do that. That's kind of commented out because it'll just load the saved one. And here we've got the M20S1, which is what tells the printer to use the saved bed leveling information. So if you include that in your G code, then you can make sure that it uses the correct information in order to try and get the bed leveling correct. Because unless you put that in there, it's as if it never had it. So it just uses the home position, that's it. Which is why I was getting this weirdness going on when I was doing my printing. That's what you have to do. You have to go into Cura or whatever your system is, go into your printer settings and add these as starting G code. So G28 will already be there because they're always home before they start. But these bits here you can add in, and if you need to, say, uncomment that G29 and then auto bed leveling every time. But say it takes a couple of minutes. If you want to wait, that's fine, you can uncomment it. If you just want to use the save one from the previous time, which should be pretty right anyway, then just load it with the 420. There you go. So here we are in Cura. You can see the spacer on the bed here. I've just re-imported it just to demonstrate the look of it. So what I'm going to do is going to go into the preferences, and I'll show you where this is. So you've got main preferences here, you've got printers. There's the printer I'm using here. You go to machine settings. And here's your start G code and your in G code. Now, if you're only interested in the start G code, now this is probably going to whiz past. Yes, it is. So where are we? There we go, just there. So in here, there's the start G code, which I showed you in that file. Okay, exactly the same code. So if you insert that bit of code there in your start G code, it'll always be there. You just look for your G28s, homing first, and then you can add this in directly after it, as I said. Anything after a semicolon is a comment. Okay, that's the main thing here. Although I've got this text here after it, you don't actually need to put that in. That's just me marking it so I know what it's about. All you actually need is that bit there. It looks line by line, so you have to put them on individual lines. So yeah, there you go. Easy as that. So if you found it interesting, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, that sort of stuff. I don't do many 3D printing videos. I'm a relative novice at it. I do plastics as a job. I work in manufacturing. I have a lot of injection molding experience, do a lot of design work and that sort of stuff, so I'm familiar with plastics. But 3D printing is a slightly different ball game. It's a bit more hit and miss. It's a bit more luck than science. I think a bit of that involved, but a lot of principles still apply. So anyway, catch you later. Give us a thumbs up if you liked it. If you didn't, then better luck next time. Bye.